Boruto and Kawaki are simply not strong enough to take down Jura. And this is something that both of them have admitted before and after the fight. And it leaves us with one question, and that simply is, how exactly are Boruto and Kawaki going to grow to become strong enough where there exists a future where they can take down Jura? And obviously that will be the case, but how exactly are we going to reach that point? This is what we're going to be discussing in today's video, as we're going to discuss both ways that Kawaki and Boruto can get stronger. And in my opinion, we're going to be seeing two different paths that both Boruto and Kawaki end up taking. And this is what I'm going to be discussing in today's video. So let's first start off with Boruto, as Boruto himself is currently the harder person to judge exactly which way he's going to get stronger. We know that currently, unlike Kawaki, he is not using his karma, and is likely not going to get injected or upgraded by a model, a clear path that we knew Kawaki was most likely going to take. However, when it comes to Boruto and his current predicament, especially looking at the karma, which is holding him back from reaching his true Otsutsuki potential by tapping into Momoshiki's abilities, like we see Ishiki do, it leaves us with a lot of questions of how exactly to gauge what route Boruto would take. But if we look at the story so far and the current hints and ways that Boruto has actually started to go stronger, there are two possibilities that I see taking place when it comes to both Boruto's character and also how he's going to be able to go stronger. The first one that we're going to be discussing is that of Boruto learning future abilities and what exactly the technique that Kasha Koji and Boruto have been using so far to allow him to go stronger. Right now, we have a stance from Kasha and Koji that what they're simply going to do is figure out ways to currently survive an era in which Jura is the strongest character, an era where the Ten Tails now has sentience, as they have allowed Code to manipulate the Ten Tails in becoming a conscious being, and we have characters like Jura that have been born. Due to Jura simply being the strongest right now, there is not much they can do when they are attacked by Jura. The simple option they have is to survive. So there's clearly something that Kasha and Koji is pushing for, the survival of Boruto, which ultimately will lead to Boruto getting stronger. And we have already seen how it has started to work for Boruto and the moves that he has. Kasha and Koji is able to see future updates in which Boruto has survived to a certain point. And to have survived at that certain point, Boruto has developed certain abilities. One of those abilities is to mimic what he lacks when it comes to his Otsutsuki powers, since he is not using the karma, and that was space-time ninjutsu, as described by Kasha and Koji, one of the basic abilities of the Otsutsukis, which we can see Boruto attempt to reproduce using the Flying Raijin. And at that point, about 6 years into the future, we can even see some of the black vortex marks that are particularly seen with the Otsutsukis and when they use space-time ninjutsu, even though he is simply using the Flying Raijin, which demonstrates the place that Boruto will eventually reach in the future. Kasha and Koji has seen those future scenes where Boruto ends up surviving for a little bit longer and acquiring an ability that allows him to do so. Now, one point when it comes to the future abilities that Boruto can awaken and already has awakened and how exactly it works is quite simple to understand how Boruto was able to come up with some of these abilities. Because one very important ability that we didn't see the training arc behind is that of the Uzuhiko. But we have currently already been given a hint as to how Boruto was able to develop this jutsu. And Boruto was able to develop this jutsu by imitating one of Jura's moves. When we pay attention to the wording that was presented to us when we had Jura explain how he was able to negate the effects of Uzuhiko, we learned that it follows similar principles to his own Biju Bomb, which is what allowed him to negate that ability. What if in the future, where Boruto ended up creating the Uzuhiko, he did that by imitating one of Jura's abilities? one thing that we see with Jura's Bijou Bomb is at times it is surrounded by some sort of a vortex, and with the additional hint that we know from Jura that it follows similar properties to Boruto's Uzuhiko, I believe that this is Ikemoto hinting to us that the way in which Boruto created the Uzuhiko, a bit like how Minato's Rasengan was basically copied by the Bijou Bomb that we have the Nine Tails and various different tail beasts perform. We know that the Rasengan was influenced by that, but here in this case we had Boruto who was influenced by a specific archetype of a Bijou Bomb, or a specific variant of a Bijou Bomb that Jura ends up creating maybe when he is mad fighting against Boruto, where Boruto, who survives a little bit longer, is now able to use that ability and create his own variant of that specific type of tail beast bomb that Jura is able to create, which has allowed him to survive for that long. And then we have a Boruto who, through the aid of Kashin Koji, is now told about this ability that he has, which in that future was inspired by Jura, but Boruto doesn't necessarily know that. That's why Jura is able to negate it, because it follows similar principles to his Bijou Bomb, as Boruto in the future may have been inspired by that, which has led to him awakening the Uzuhiko. So what is the point of me saying all of this right now? The simple point is to explain how exactly Boruto was able to tap in to some of the abilities that Kashin Koji has shown him in the future. It is by allowing Boruto to survive a little bit longer for each update, which then shows us future possibilities that may be very low to occur, but it still occurred, which allows Kashin Koji to see the future Boruto that has survived from a particular timeline that had a low possibility of taking place, and see the abilities that Boruto is using that is different from the other Borutos that eventually end up dying. And he takes those abilities that Boruto has awakened and gives it to the current Boruto, which then ends up boosting the odds of Boruto in this current timeline surviving. And this constant cycle of getting new updates and potentially seeing abilities that Boruto can use or will eventually awaken, then Kashin Koji can better equip Boruto. And that may be the path of power that we will see Boruto take until he is strong enough to then be able to face the likes of Kashin Koji. This is an outcome. But with the way that Boruto has suggested that he has to work with Kawaki, and how he and Kawaki are going to be the ones to defeat Jura, it still makes it seem to me that they're going to have to deal with this problem, the problem of the karma, as even in this fight, Boruto couldn't help Kawaki, as I ended up predicting, simply due to the fact of the karma. As if Kawaki is using the karma, he has to focus completely on restraining Momoshiki for him to then be able to do anything. If he doesn't, Momoshiki will take control, because of the simple fact that the karma would then be active. That's why when some people questioned why Kawaki turned off the karma, it was simply due to the fact that he wanted to allow Boruto chance to not worry about his karma resonating, and then focus on finding exactly where the marker that he wanted to teleport to was at. That's why Kawaki turned off his karma, to allow Boruto to do so. So that does still entail that when they end up fighting both of them together, Boruto will have to have better mastery of his karma, either by finding a way to seal it, in which he is able to deal with Momoshiki a lot better and doesn't have to worry about using the karma at all, or he has to find a way to defeat Momoshiki inside of him, or kick Momoshiki out of his conscious, which then allows him to use the karma. Or simply his gamble will be to allow Momoshiki to take control and ultimately have Kawaki kill him after probably Borushiki is done fighting Jura and defeats him. Those are the simple ways in which we can see Boruto grow. But one thing I really do like is those futures that allow Boruto to see a little bit more about how he survived using the abilities that he learns in the future and then gets it now. I really like this inclusion, and I haven't seen any series have this, and I really like how they're doing this in Boruto currently. So let me know what you think, especially when it comes to Boruto and how he will get stronger. Now, when we're talking about Kawaki, things get pretty interesting, especially due to some of the ways that Kawaki is going to get stronger using the karma is something that does apply to Boruto in some slight manner. The parts that doesn't apply to Boruto is how we could potentially see Kawaki put Shibai cells inside of him, which would allow him to grow stronger and would allow him to potentially manifest another Senjutsu ability, and would simply confirm that Kawaki is stronger than Ishiki at that point. But one thing that is very interesting that we could see being explored is a better understanding of True Essence Karma, because I've had a lot of questions being posed to me exactly how it works, and we can clearly see that a lot of people are confused by it, and it does make a lot of sense to me. But from my current understanding, due to an intense analysis on it personally because I was curious, there is a simple way to understand True Essence Karma. So we know that with a regular karma, it gives you exponential increases in your power and speed. But with True Essence Karma, it allows you to tap into the battle experience of your Otsutsuki, allowing you to use their dojutsus, their fighting styles, and use autos to battle. But the main gist of the karma itself is to relay onto the user more power or abilities from the Otsutsuki to allow them to have a better chance of surviving and their vessel not being killed. So the karma, on top of it allowing an Otsutsuki to come back to life, in that process it relates to the vessel abilities from the Otsutsuki, allowing it to survive. Now, the extent to which you can use those abilities is measured by how much you can tap in to your Otsutsuki's true essence, hence the True Essence Karma label. And this is what we currently see and are able to differentiate and to how a person's karma looks and how it affects their body as to whether they're using True Essence Karma or not. No, this explanation may be a little hard to understand, but it's simply like this. Kawaki, when he uses his regular karma and not its true essence, we see that he still looks more like Kawaki in the sense that he doesn't have horns at all. But when he uses True Essence Karma, we can see a Kawaki that develops these horn-like figures that make him look more like the true essence of Ishiki himself. When it comes to Boruto, we can clearly see that Boruto also develops horns when he uses True Essence Karma. And an easy way to gauge this is by looking at Otsutsukis who are already experienced with the karma. When Momoshiki takes over Boruto's body, we can see that he develops these horns, and we can see that his karma pattern changes and deviates from the one that Boruto usually has when he is using version 1 karma, not the full extent of True Essence. This is an easy way to gauge whether a person is using True Essence Karma or is not. And this is also the same when it comes to Kawaki and Jigen. When Jigen uses True Essence Karma, when he goes all out against Naruto and Sasuke, you can start to see horns appear, demonstrating the true essence of Ishiki. And when he is not in the beginning of the fight, you simply see the karma, but you don't see the horns at all, as he is not tapping to his full power. He's not tapping into the true essence of Ishiki. Which then tells us that instead of viewing the karma, True Essence Karma at least, as a separate transformation, it's better to view the karma as a progression of how much power you are tapping into or are able to tap into from your personal Otsutsuki host. So the more you're able to tap into an Otsutsuki's host power, the more power you're able to use, and the more you look like that Otsutsuki, which is why you start to develop these horns. When Boruto first used True Essence Karma, the reason why he didn't have the horns but still looked a little bit closer to Momoshiki when he's using the karma is because he was using the karma's power to a greater extent, meaning that there is still more that he could have pushed into, which would have led to him having the horns. But at that stage, because it was the first time that he was tapping into that, that was True Essence Karma for Boruto. That was the most amount of power he could use. That's why after the fact that Boruto dies, he says that he can channel more of Momoshiki's powers, meaning that he can use a greater extent of Momoshiki's true essence in his body. That's exactly the true definition of True Essence Karma. We can also see it with Kawaki. You'll say, oh, why did Kawaki manage to have a better showcasing of True Essence Karma than Boruto, where he, unlike Boruto, was able to demonstrate these horns? The thing is, that wasn't even the first time that Kawaki had used True Essence Karma. if you go way back, when Kawaki was pushed and angered, when Jigen came saying that he would take Naruto and kill him, we had Kawaki who demonstrated these horns. And what did Jigen say? He said that he didn't know that Kawaki could tap into this much of the karma's powers, indicating that he didn't know that Kawaki could tap into this much of Ishiki's true essence, which demonstrates the horns. So when it comes to Kawaki and him not using true essence karma, it is simply due to the fact that Kawaki in that instance, he is not tapping into that much of Ishiki's true essence. We've seen that it is quite likely that Kawaki and Boruto have not fully mastered true essence karma. We see that with Boruto, he had to be pushed by code, and we also seen that with Kawaki, he had to first be pushed by Jigen all the way back in the past, and then he had to be pushed by Borishiki when he awakened the karma, and due to emotional factors, he was able to use it right off the bat. And also we do see that in the future scene that didn't take place where Kawaki eventually killed Boruto, he is able to manifest that, which means that there has to be some emotional push that a character undergoes, especially characters like Kawaki, for him to be able to use true essence karma, as it is not something they mastered. Just like Kawaki and Boruto did not start off being able to fly automatically. It's something that had to give more time to eventually take place and develop. It is the same with Boruto and Kawaki, especially Kawaki, who uses the karma more often. For him, as time progresses, he will be able to use true essence karma to a greater extent. But for now, when it comes to the horns, it seems as though he has to have a little bit of a push for him to be able to tap in to the entire true essence of Ishiki. At least that is what was shown to us prior to Kawaki getting his limiters removed. And in that fight, we know that Kawaki wasn't going all out, due to the simple fact that he was buying time for Boruto and already knew that they wouldn't be able to take down Jura at that moment. So these are the ways that I believe that Boruto and Kawaki can eventually grow stronger. Now, if you want to find out exactly how the next arc will enable that to take place with the various fights that will occur in that arc, you have to watch this video right here as I discuss the major fight of Damien and Mamushi.